For this segment, we'll be reviewing Ashlee Vance's Biography of Elon Musk. In the book, Vance walks us through the early days of Elon starting out in South Africa, all the way to the founding of Zip2, Elon's first company, followed by X.com, which later became PayPal, and then the modern slate of companies that Elon's really known for. So that would be Tesla, SpaceX, and SolarCity. Adam, what are your thoughts on the book?
So overall, I think this is a pretty interesting, flattering look at Elon. In particular, you get a look at his difficult childhood in South Africa, which really kind of gives you insight into how he became who he is today. You see kind of Elon's drive, determination, and you see some really interesting character traits like his incredible memory, which pops up again and again in the book. But having said that, I mean, he really comes across as kind of an egomaniacal asshole, many times during this book. He's an incredibly difficult person to work for. He frequently chews out his employees for hours on end. He has quite a few undesirable traits in terms of potentially taking credit for other people's designs and ideas. And in that case, he's somewhat quite difficult to root for. You also have instances where his relationships with his spouses are not the most flattering either. There's one memorable moment with his first wife, Justine, at their wedding, where Elon leans over to her and informs her that he is the alpha in this relationship. And so when you read stuff like that, it's hard to look at Elon, with rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was thrown off by that, and there's some other quotes in the book where Elon speaks very fondly of Alexander the Great, which is fine, except, it gives you the perspective this guy's trying to take over the world. The other surprising thing about the book to me was the actual history of these companies. In my mind, I'd always considered Elon to be the founder of Tesla. Well, in reality, he was just simply one of the first primary investors who later took over the company, but he didn't actually found it. And then if you go back to the days of PayPal, X.com was important, but Peter Thiel's contribution was equally important. So the interesting thing is that SpaceX is really Elon's true company. And the interesting thing here is that in the book, it makes it evident over and over again that the goal of forming a colony on Mars is not simply something for the media or just this lofty goal that they're trying to push people towards. It is actually something that Elon intends to do. Adam, do you think that's reasonable?
Yeah, so the Mars goal in particular, it was surprising to me just how much Elon believes in it, mainly because I don't understand why you would think it's a good idea. Mars is a completely inhospitable planet. It's not going to be an easy place to live, any point in our lifetime. But Elon seems really set on this goal of, getting humans there. And I think when you traditionally look at people who've been willing to, travel long distances, to colonize new lands, you think of people who are looking for natural resources, or you think of persecuted religious minorities. And, it's hard to kind of see these groups wanting to go to Mars right now, given the level of dependence you would have to have on support from Earth. And I think Elon kind of frames it as being almost an insurance policy for the planet. Whereby if things go horribly wrong on Earth, at least we'll have this Mars colony to kind of keep the human race going. But I think a logical counter to that is to kind of say, maybe we should focus more on, Earth itself and improving things here versus kind of this somewhat of a pipe dream of making this great colony on Mars. And, I really wish that the author had kind of interrogated Elon on this, during his interviews with him, or kind of just delved more deeply into whether or not this is a good idea. But instead, you just kind of get it relayed to you as, we're going to try and build this Mars colony, and that's that.
Yeah, I thought one thing that was interesting was the number of people who were willing to talk with the author. It seems that Elon has some sort of Trump-esque desire to sue anyone that disagrees with his public opinions, which is obviously going to cloud the type of result you can get in a book like this. The next thing I'll point out is the author is clearly infatuated with Musk. The author loves having time with Musk, loves talking with Musk, and it's very flattering, as you say. But in the end, I thought the book was actually pretty poorly written. The chapters sort of go on, and you have really exciting events. I mean, you have the founding of some of the most interesting companies of our time with one of the more interesting people of our time, and yet it's a completely boring read. Even at times where very exciting things are happening, you frankly don't care. So if it's, if you're looking for more information on Musk, it's certainly a great read, but otherwise I'd have to recommend against it, simply because of the writing style is so poor.
Yeah, as I was reading it, I was kind of thinking, what if Michael Lewis had written this book? I mean, this is a guy that, made the baseball analytics revolution actually seem interesting. Mm-hmm. And I think someone like him who could bring kind of, a more effusive prose to the whole thing maybe would have done a better job. There's instances where SpaceX gets down to its final rocket launch. They're basically about to run out of money and go bust if they don't get what is their fourth rocket launch to go successfully. And this should be a really compelling, interesting event. You have this great trepidation. The rocket's in the air for 5 minutes, and at any point it could explode. But you're just kind of reading the prose, and it's really not that compelling at all. But I think we don't want to be too harsh on Elon through this. I do think some of his accomplishments are legitimately amazing. SpaceX in particular, I think, is kind of his crowning achievement. He plowed so much of his personal funds into it, and he's built this company that has been able to deliver these low-cost satellite launches that have undercut, these established bloated incumbents who, were kind of relying on government contracts and not really innovating in any meaningful fashion. Mm-hmm. Plus, as Elon points out, SpaceX is kind of a company that's built in the USA. And I think a lot of people see it as being a good thing, but we now have an alternative to relying on, say, Russia for space station launches and that kind of thing. But this kind of discussion is largely, I think, missing from the book. The author does not really kind of interrogate the positive or negative impacts to society of Elon's companies. In particular, look at Tesla, which is relied on government subsidies to really kind of enable its business. And the author doesn't really talk about what is the actual net environmental impact of Tesla. The fact that you're not using a gas engine is great, but what about the cost of creating these lithium-ion batteries and disposing of them? So stuff like that I really felt was missing from this book and would have given it a bit more depth.
Yeah, absolutely. There's huge elements of this book that are missing that I would have loved to learn more about, but unfortunately we just don't get it. So if you're interested in hearing a little bit more about Musk, maybe in a perhaps biased view, take a look at the book, but otherwise I would say pass on this one.